Welcome to Wealth Untethered, your guide to the principles and mindset of a genuinely wealthy life. This podcast explores universal laws, principles, and strategies that lead to wealth and fulfillment. We delve into topics like investment, cash flow, business, estate and legacy planning, longevity, health, science, and more. All in an attempt to examine and challenge your mindset about what's possible for you. To learn more about Wealth Untethered, visit our website, wealthuntethered.com. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show. So 08 and 09 was it was a rough couple years. The aftermath, right, taught me some super valuable lessons. But growing up, my family, we vacation in Cape Cod every single summer. And so when I started a family, that's what we decided to do. And it started with my honeymoon in 03. Now in 2015, we had kind of dug ourselves out of the financial hardships, right? We were, on the brink of foreclosure and bankruptcy. We were on food stamps, right, for the better part of 2 years. But by 2015, we were out. And we had spent 2 weeks on Cape Cod. So it was Cynthia, it was Hannah, my oldest, Megan. Jack was 15 months at the time. We even brought our Toto lookalike dog, right? It was incredible, right? And so we're, get onto the Airbus 320. We're all nestled in, all sitting together. And we take off. As we crossed Nebraska, we get this announcement over the loudspeakers from the pilot, right? The normal kind of standard announcement. Folks, there are some storm systems in the area. There might be some pockets of rough air, so I'm gonna turn the seatbelt sign on, right? So pretty standard.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So as we're going, right, just probably a few minutes later, there was some just light turbulence, some bumps, and then it was like those violent shakes, it's like, oh man, something's off.
Yeah.
And
your alertness went up.
And then the pilot came on again. And this time his tone was distinctly different. It was kind of hurried, anxious, and it was, flight attendants, take your seats. The gap is closed. Brace for impact.
Impact?
Right? It was kind of it was as if he was this army military voice. It was totally different.
Whew.
And it's kind of what's going on? And just a moment later, our Airbus 320 Delta Flight 1889 flew about 550 miles an hour directly into a hailstorm. The noise was deafening. I can't explain it because I had never heard it before. I've never heard it since. And then it happened. The plane banked left, and then it banked right into a full-on nosedive. There were bags flying everywhere, drinks flying everywhere, books, phones. Gasps by the passengers turned into full-on screams, panic.
Oh my goodness.
And we kind of Cynthia grabbed my arm and she was crying. She was like, no. So we kind of huddled together. We kind of got Jack in the middle. I had Chloe, our dog, in her carry-on, right underneath my feet, securing her. And Cynthia started praying. And that's when the thought came, this is it. Yeah, it was crazy.
I can't imagine.
So we dove 14,000, almost 15,000 feet in less than 2 minutes. It was the pilot's evasive action, right?
And a massive jet airplane.
But we leveled off, right? So we leveled off. And then we get this announcement on the loudspeaker. It was from the flight attendant. We didn't hear from the pilot again. It was from the flight attendant who said, and it was clearly she was on edge. And she's like, it was kind of stuttered,
Oh, man.
ladies and gentlemen, we're emergency landing in Denver. So about a day later, we got back to Salt Lake. And that afternoon, I got a knock at the door. And it was my neighbor, Rick, who he was a 30-year veteran pilot for Delta. And he had just received the emergency report from our flight. And we learned that the Airbus 320 had limited visibility, right, from a radar standpoint. And so it relied on air traffic control to navigate it long distance. And we also learned that the evasive action that was taken knocked out, first off, it shattered the windshield. And it kind of caved in the nose cone of the plane where all the power to the cockpit was. So all the flight instruments were out.
Oh my
So
goodness.
what saved us was the auto land technology in the middle of the plane. Somebody thought to put it in the middle of the plane. So it auto landed us in Denver. No pilot.
Way.
Yeah. And over the years, Rick has kind of kept me in the loop. He's since retired, but he, still involved to some degree with Delta. But he's kept me in the loop on how Delta has used our specific flight for all sorts of different training from a pilot standpoint. They've obviously upgraded all of the radar systems, right, with the Airbus 320. But it was a close call, man. And there's so many lessons that I learned from that. And I would say the first is, I think my first lesson was 2008, 2009, put me on defense, right? I'd been hoarding cash. I had like hundreds of thousands of dollars of precious metals, like, kind of stored away, hidden away, right? And I was playing defense. I was kind of a miser, right? Pinching pennies. And so it taught me some valuable lessons there that life's not guaranteed, right? And even though all that shit happened to me 2008, 2009, right? It wasn't like life had to continue that way or that would happen again, that I didn't learn my lesson, because I learned a lot of lessons because of that. And so another was, let's say, from a living in the present versus living in the future, right? I think we're taught so much to think about our future, think about what we want out of life. We're going to talk about that today in the podcast. But
end of the year.
But at the same time, the future does not exist. Even though we think it does, all that exists is right now. And so if we're living life saying, I'm not going to be happy until this happens, I'm not going to be happy until this happens, I won't feel complete or fulfilled until this happens, I think we're kidding ourselves, right? So that was another very valuable lesson for me. And the third was from a financial standpoint, right? It taught me a lot of valuable lessons as far as how I was operating my finances, how I was, investing, how I was putting money away, what I was doing with the business as well. And there's a lot more. Obviously, from a technology standpoint, right, there's a lot of initiative I have within my business and how we integrate technology and how we use it. I think sometimes people often rely on old technologies, right, just because that's the habit. But there's vulnerabilities associated with that oftentimes knock people off course. So tons of lessons, dude, from this very, I would say, traumatic experience, but I'm grateful that it happened. I think it was meant for me, right? It was meant for me. Life was kind of teaching me a myriad of lessons within one experience so that, number one, I can learn myself, but obviously, so I can obviously use it for those that I care about, I love, that I want to make a difference in, for those I want to make a difference in their lives.
Yeah. Wow, Patrick. I've had experiences myself individually, but I have not had experiences with my wife or my kids with me at the same time. Yep. I have not.
That was my biggest fear. I would say my biggest fear was leaving my kid, like leaving my children, leaving my wife, leaving Cynthia. But honestly, in the moment where I was like, this is it. It's over. Like it was actually a somewhat of a peaceful experience, right? Because that's where it was like, okay, we're together. Obviously it was crazy, scary for them, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's like in that moment, that's just the feeling I got when I said those words.
Yeah. And I wrote down a perspective, what, we can choose to leverage an experience like that. we can be conscious of an experience like that to be able to leverage it, or not, and not think about it and allow it to pull us in this opposite direction, or pull us in a direction that maybe isn't healthy for us. I look at times in my life where I've had experiences and things, and I haven't been conscious of gaining a perspective or extracting a lesson from that and applying it in my life. But then I've had others where I have, and what that's done for me and how that's assisted myself and so many other people around me.
Well, I've had the opportunity to talk to people who, except I don't think many people have the thought, I'm going to die. Like this is it. I'm going to die. I think some people get that, but not many. And so I think that right there just taught me about, the fragile nature of life. Right. And and that's why I really focus. My personal mission statement is to bring my best self to life, especially my presence. Right. That's just one aspect of my personal mission statement. Right. Because I feel like it's like who we are, our being is right now. Like the way in which we're living is right now in this moment. And I think our fulfillment comes from being at that best level in that moment. Yeah. Not waiting for the next moment or the next moment, which is going to come, but it's still going to be the moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. For sure. Well, Patrick, my passion for motorcycles.
Yeah.
I've got one in my office here. I have
your garage is packed with them.
And that passion came from a young age. In 7th grade, I took a job at Cycletown Yamaha. 7th grade, and I was sweeping floors, washing bikes, emptying trash cans, and I was making $2.25 an hour. And I worked there because I wanted to pay for things that I wanted in my life: clothes for school, definitely parts for motorcycles, and dating girls. Like those were my driving forces in my life. And so I continued to work at Cycletown Yamaha all through middle school, high school, and into college. And when I got into college, I took a job to sell cell phones. And I thought, hey, this would be a great job to do, selling cell phones. I was fascinated by it. I didn't have one. There's like this new technology, 1993.
The big brick ones with the big long antenna on it?
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. Motorola was the big carrier back then. Yeah. During those days, there's actually a bag phone and then the brick phone. Mm-hmm. And then within 6 months of working for them, they went to the Motorola flip phone.
The first
it's called the DP550. My first 30 days in 1993 selling cell phones, I made over 10 times what I was making at Yamaha. I made $20,000 in 30 days selling cell phones. I hadn't made 20 grand in a year, let alone in 30 days. And I meet my wife, Wendy. We fall in love. We get married. We have both of our kids, Kennedy and Caden. And I'm off to the races. I'm making money. I'm investing. We're just doing all sorts of amazing things. We spent a lot of money. We made a lot of money. We wasted a lot of money. And I find out that I'm actually pretty good at not only making money, but investing. And so I get into the financial services industry. And that's where I meet Ray, Les, and Garrett. And one day after a few years, Les comes to me and he has this investment opportunity. I trust Les. And he introduces me to Investor Guy. I do my due diligence. And Investor Guy promises to pay me 5% a month on my cash. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is a pretty good deal. I've researched it. I trust Les. He's already been involved with this guy. So I think to myself, I'm going to start with a shoe-in investment of $50,000. $50,000, 5%, that's $2,500 a month that I was being paid in interest, and the checks kept coming. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to send him $250,000 of more money. So I did. Checks kept coming. So then I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. I'm going to send him another $500,000, $800,000 with Investor Guy, and the checks kept coming. So then I'm thinking to myself, this is such a great opportunity. I want to share it with some of my clients. So I share it with Joe and Kathy and Mark, and the checks kept coming until August of 2007 when the checks stopped. September, no checks. And I'm starting to freak out. I call Investor Guy. He doesn't return my calls. I start liquidating my personal assets to pay clients their interest September, October, November, December of 2007. And during that time, Patrick, I get a phone call. And I answer the phone, and on the other end of the phone, I hear, "This is Special Agent Mark Jones from the FBI. We understand you have investment dealings with Investor Guy. We need to talk." My heart sunk. Like I was just beside myself. I was having an outer body experience during this time. Next thing you know, I'm signing a deal with the feds. They're taping a wire to my chest for me to try to find out where all this cash had gone, but it was too late. Over $4.8 million of my family's entire life savings completely gone, and over $10 million of my clients' cash gone, completely gone. I'm a mess. I was road biking, cycling over 250 miles a week during that time. And I'm 6'3", 205 pounds today. I was 185 lean, mean cycling machine. And I went from 185 to 170 just from stress, and my body would break out in hives all over it. I was on antidepressants. I was taking narcotic pain pills just to numb myself out. And I was a complete asshole to be around with my family. And I wasn't just having an occasional drink in the evenings. I was drinking myself silly for years at a time because of that experience. It was towards the end of that 3-year period of time that I called my pit that I heard a knock on my front door. And I couldn't keep my company together. I had to shut it down, completely shut everything down as a result of the stress and the anxiety of that experience. And then it was a Tuesday morning, October of 2010, when I heard a knock at my front door. And I went to the door and I answered it. And I saw Wendy's, my wife Wendy's entire family standing there with 2 big U-Haul trucks parked in the driveway of our house. And they said, "We're here to move Wendy and the kids out." I couldn't blame them, Patrick. I couldn't blame them. I was a mess. And 12 hours later, I'm facing the reality of my decisions on the bathroom floor, alone, as I grab my pistol and load a bullet in the chamber of a P89 Ruger pistol and press it up against the roof of my mouth, ready to take my life. Bullet in the chamber, finger on the trigger. And I'm screaming to God. And I'm screaming, "Why, God, why?" questioning what had led me to that point to put that gun in my mouth, when I had a rush come over my body that I'd never felt before. And I carefully set the gun down. And I told myself in that moment that I would extract the lessons that led to that point of me putting that gun in my mouth, apply those lessons in my life, and to share them with as many people as I possibly could. So, Patrick, part of us doing this podcast and my why behind what I do on a daily basis, and thank you everyone that is watching this, that is listening to this, you're assisting me in fulfilling on my promise to God the fall of 2010. So I went to work. I sobered up. I called Garrett Gunderson. I remember having phone calls with you during that time, and I was gaining perspective and I was extracting lessons. 45 days later, I'm happy to report that I moved back in with my wife and kids. It wasn't, when Wendy left me, it wasn't, "Hey, I want a divorce." It's, "Hey, you're not healthy to be around." And I knew it. It was during that time of sobering up and working on myself and having phone calls with yourself and Garrett Gunderson, Garrett White, Kim Butler. I remember hiring Kim to assist me, to coach me and to train me during that time. But it was Garrett Gunderson that said this: "You can choose to leverage, Michael, your past experiences to create moving forward." It's just a shift in my story and in my perspective. And I'm happy to report also that from 2011 to 2018, I was able to earn back all of that cash that I had lost. Applying what you and I discover and have grinded and and learned for our own life that we share with all of our clients, that we've been sharing in these podcasts to all of you. And it's the perspective. It's the perspective. It's what the wealthy are doing with their cash. It's what we have been doing with our cash that's allowed us to be able to not only live this wealthy life personally, but also professionally in all areas of our life. And so, Patrick, as we conclude this year, 2023, it's an exciting time for me, and I know it is for you also. We were talking about this before we pressed record, to get clear about the lessons, to be clear about our vision, and to look over this last year about what has worked and what has not worked, and to extract those most valuable lessons of the working and the not working, right? Success leaves clues. What are all the things that have been working? What are the things that didn't work? And then from there, align that with our vision to be able to make new targets for the new year.
Well, let's start with a couple of things to pull from both the lessons. Number one, I look at what we've covered this entire season, this first season of the podcast, and for the audience, for you guys, for you specifically, to understand where what we talk about comes from. I mean, these are just I would say, one of our staple experiences that we've had, but there are many others.
Yeah.
And I think a blessing we have working with individuals and families and business owners is to kind of peer into the lives of so many different lives and see some of the same fundamental challenges. And what I feel it comes down to is there are certain principles in life. That's why we always try to focus on principles, right? The environment is always changing. Technology is always changing. You are always changing, whether it's you're getting older, whether it's the city you live in, whether it's a job that you have, things are always changing. It's there's so much dynamic to every aspect of life, but there are certain principles associated with what to do, how to govern behavior, how to govern action. And so I really look at, the experience you have, and it's another example of what I would say is something that I don't think everybody understands. At least I don't fully. I have such a desire to understand it even more, which is resistance. I think sometimes, again, going to Garrett's comment to you, is life taught you a lesson. Okay, you can choose to hide that lesson away, or you can choose to embrace it. You can choose to embrace, wow, this is something powerful. I'm going to work through it, as opposed to hiding it, suppressing it with alcohol, suppressing it with medication.
Mask it, shrink versus expand.
100%, right? Because I knew you during those times when you were first getting back into the game.
Game of life.
The game of life, yes. Everything. And you owned it. And you've used that really to propel what you've been able to do with your career. This is where I see, and I think there's other aspects of life, right, where we face resistance. Really, if you were to go and look at every area of life, there's a kind of a wheel of life exercise. There's body, being, balance, and business, which you've talked about a lot, which has to do with the warrior movement. And there are these things, these aspects of life where we can calibrate them. If we were to ask ourselves from a body standpoint, from a health standpoint, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we? From a relationship standpoint, where are we? From a spiritual standpoint, where are we? From a financial standpoint, where are we on a scale of 1 to 10? We know almost intuitively what that number is.
When we slow down enough to take the time
and
to assess it and evaluate it.
The unexamined life is not worth living.
And I love that.
And so the idea is, when we do that, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong. If you answer a 4 or a 3 or a 2, what it does is it shows you opportunity. I think life speaks to us, right, through resistance, right? And life gives us opportunities to move through resistance. And in doing so, life comes through us and it unleashes and it gives us all these new perspectives, epiphanies, ideas, energy, and subsequently the corresponding fulfillment.
Yeah. Right? Why not view it as an opportunity? Right before you said that, in my mind, I'm like, oh, opportunity. And then you said opportunity. Why not view it as an opportunity? Wendy and I did some year-end planning at Wake Up Warrior with Garrett White and a group of individuals the end of last week. And I kept saying to other individuals in my shares and even in myself in my notes for next year, what an opportunity. Why not view it as that? Why not tell ourselves that story?
And that's where I believe those type of exercises are extremely powerful if we choose in to the experiences of doing that, whether it's going to an event or whether it's taking time to reflect on our own. In the process, I think sometimes people don't examine because they're afraid of the resistance.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like a Star Wars movie. It's like one of those, they're afraid of the resistance.
resistance.
But I think that energy that essentially gives us those internal feelings of fear, right? I think we're taught maybe intuitively to think of those as like something to avoid, but they're the most powerful teacher.
What does the world tell people? What's the message of the media and the world out there today when it comes to that?
Somebody else's fault. It's something somebody else did. It's not your fault, right? It was caused by somebody else. You don't have to feel this. You don't have to experience this. It's all avoidance.
Yeah. And when we look at ads on TV and the big pharma out there today, they want us to just mask it.
Suppress it, mask it.
Mask it and not go to the root cause of it.
So that being the case, like we're kind of framing the discussion today because it is the end of the year.
It is.
Right? But whether you're listening to this at the end of the year or you're listening to this in June, right? Time is a construct of man. It's kind of how we compartmentalize certain things, but you could start tomorrow if it's June 15th, right? It doesn't really matter.
You could do this on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, or you could do it on an annual basis.
Yep. So we're approaching really what people face as the biggest obstacle, right, to making progress and experiencing even more with life, right, is this idea of resistance. But the next, right, which we've talked about, at length is vision, right, is essentially crafting and a vision for your life. It could be for a year, it could be for 3 years, it could be for 10 years, but it's crafting that vision. And I feel what that does is it opens up the window that is your glass ceiling right now. It opens that window, right? So you're not bumping your head against the glass ceiling. It opens up the window of possibility.
It gives us clarity. It gives us clarity to work towards something and to have that be our North Star. Right? Vision, when I think of vision, I'm thinking future possibility. What do I want to have? And again, I'm thinking of Dan Sullivan here. It's okay to want what I want. It's okay for each of you to want what you want, because when we're clear about that, then we're enrolling a lot of other people around us in that vision. And when we were talking about this before, Patrick, prior to hitting record, if we don't have our own vision, someone else has a vision for us, and they're going to enroll us into their vision.
Guaranteed. Now, you may not think that, but it's the expectations your parents set for you. That's a vision somebody else has crafted for you, right? Going to my story, right? Air traffic control that was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was giving direction to a plane in Nebraska, saying, okay, this is what's going on. This is what you have, right? And they miscalculated what was going on, which caused my plane to almost go down and ultimately putting in jeopardy the lives of a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
Right? It was that lesson of like, okay, Delta, we got to upgrade the technology. And I'm sure there's a financial decision, right? But they upgraded the technology so that the pilot would have full long-range visibility of those weather patterns, right? Right now, again, there's a vision of a pilot, right? A vision of a plane going from one place to another, right? And it's never a straight line. It's always going here, it's going up, it's going down, okay? But even though there's point A and point B, with life, right? You're in a point A right now. Where's your point B? Is it the expectations your parents set? Is it what your boss tells you, right? Is it what the media tells you the USA has to be like this in order for you to be happy, okay? Is it your neighbors? Is it your friends? Is it your friend group? Is it the community that you're in? Is it somebody else? You have a vision for your life, period. Did you create it, or was it created by somebody else?
Yeah. And was it created by the circumstances around you? And when those things come up, if we're clear about what we want, we're going to continue to press forward. We're not going to let that resistance knock us off our path. Because, yeah, you had to land in Denver, but then you were able to get from Denver to Salt Lake City, which was your destination, the vision that you had set to get there. Yeah. So there are all sorts of things that come up along the way. So, yeah, I love this time of year, Patrick, but I also do some sort of an assessment on a daily basis, and I do a deeper assessment on a weekly basis. I have weekly targets, I have monthly targets, I have quarterly targets, and all of that leads towards this future possibility of an annual target. you talk about the wheel of life. I'm so used to working in the framework of body, being, balance, and business from Wake Up Warrior. But in my body this last year, what has worked? What has not worked? What do I want to start doing? Or excuse me, what do I want to stop doing? What do I want to sustain, continue to do? And what do I want to start? And so just a little bit of a framework for me. My wife and I did this in length, 4 days. We took 4 days, Patrick. We took 4 days out of our life as a married couple to assess what has worked, what has not worked, and to get clear on a future possibility, a vision individually and then together as a couple, and then for our family on the future, the possibility. And then it's everything that we do today, tomorrow, the next day that drives towards that future possibility. And yeah, it ebbs and flows, and we may have to take an emergency landing along the way that we don't see. But there's this vision out here in the future that's right up here. And by setting that vision and working towards it, it could take us off in this other area that Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach, calls a strategic byproduct. Mm-hmm. But if we never set out towards that original vision and started working towards it, we would never go off in that other direction, that strategic byproduct. And that strategic byproduct could be something even greater than that original vision.
But what the vision does, again, it's the clarity. It's that what that vision does is it kind of focuses in on what you really want. It's not ambiguous, right? It's clear. I would say a compelling vision is something that probably scares you. Okay. When you have that, now the window opens up, right? And I would say the activities, the relationships, the opportunities, they're right. I guarantee they're all right there. They're right there in front of you. But now because you have focus, okay, now you can focus your intentions. You can focus your relationships. You can focus your behavior and activity toward the things that are going to get you to that vision.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. A compelling vision is something that scares us a little bit. I could say to you, Patrick, yeah, I want my vision next year is to work out 5 days a week. How does it move you? Does it move any of you? But if I said, I want to train and compete in a 100-mile bike race at my age group, early 50s, in my age group and compete and place in the top 5, that's more of a compelling vision, right? And then there could be something even greater than that. And then what are the steps that I need to do and to take along the way to be able to get to that point?
So if you got in 6th place, that would totally mean that it was not worth it, right? And that's the other thing too. I think sometimes we have this vision, right, and we get very specific of what it is, and we fall short of it. Vision sometimes, right, is not to get to the exact thing; it's to make progress. And the idea is like we're going to make progress throughout our entire life. I feel that there is this like symbiotic relationship, right, between fulfillment and making progress. And progress means that you push through resistance. You do things that are scary for you. So here's the other thing too that we talked about. I look at, sometimes we want to play it safe. We want to secure life, right? We don't want any hardship. We want to avoid pain, right? I feel that there's a place for security. At the same time, it's what we've learned and mentioned on the show a number of times, which is the quality of life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty that you can comfortably handle. Uncertainty. I feel that there is uncertainty in body, being, balance, and business.
Yeah.
Right? Is that feeling of risk. It's the feeling of like putting yourself out there. Right? Most people, I would say, instead of taking risks in the things that they control, go out and take risks in areas that they don't control.
Yeah.
Right? And they expend that energy in things that ultimately either collapse their marriage, it collapse their finances, it collapse their business, it collapse their health. Right? But when you start to realize that you have some energy inside you that wants to take risks, it wants to experience uncertainty, okay? And then you focus it on going on a 3-day weekend trip with your wife, total out of surprise, right? Or going on a week's vacation, or going skydiving, or flying to Vegas and driving a Ferrari. I know, right, from experience that people are so driven to like bet on crypto, bet on this thing, bet on AI doing this thing. And if you do this chip investment, then Elon Musk's announcement is going to make you a bit, blah, 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 right? It's like people are compelled and they're like, ooh, I want to do that because, right, of that feeling of I want to take risks. I want to experience the feeling of uncertainty. But those are areas that ultimately have unintended consequences because you have no control over it. But you do have control over calling up USA skydiving and skydiving over Arizona,
Yeah.
right? Lake Mead or Lake Powell or whatever,
Yeah.
some of those amazing skydiving places in the, in the West. So it's that idea of like, if you really understand those energies and the fact that fulfilling life comes from experiencing those energies, when you start to channel them in areas that you control and have influence over, man, sky's the limit.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, Patrick, and I'm setting up more, and this excites me because this is one of my life lessons that I extracted from losing all that cash and ultimately putting a gun in my mouth over it to where I'm at today and being conscious of this. What I hear you saying is that uncertainty, risk, having variety in our life is a basic need we will fulfill. So it's being conscious in taking risk in an area where we have control, where we have knowledge, where we have experience, where we have expertise, certainly purpose and passion. And if we're deliberate about that, then it's not gambling. If we're not, and we relinquish control and we take that risk, that's called gambling.
Yep.
And gambling has a major effect on our life.
Yep.
I gambled, I lost, I stuck a gun in my mouth, and I almost took my life over it. And my self-worth was tied to my financial balance sheet. I wasn't even considering my human life value balance sheet. I wasn't even thinking about or being conscious of taking risk and doing it in a healthy way. And so as you're assessing what has worked and what has not worked this last year, look at the areas where, first of all, look at any area that you may have relinquished control. And are you taking risk in that area? And how has that affected all the other areas of your life? Be deliberate about fulfilling risk in your life, but only take risk and have variety in areas where you have control, where you have knowledge, where you have expertise. It was risky for me to build out this studio. It was risky for me to write the book that I wrote and spend all the money on that and the marketing, the packaging around that. But that's an area where I have knowledge and expertise and purpose and passion, and I have control.
But you also expanded through the entire process. And so the
100%.
fact that you've grown through it in and of itself was likely worth the investment. Because first off, you don't know when the return is going to come. And the return may not be financial, right? The return may be something that has nothing to do with the business.
Totally.
Right? So in the end, I mean, I look at the experiences we've had, right? And right now you're recording your audiobook, right, for your book. And that's been challenging.
Yeah.
Right. But look at what you're learning in the process because you're working with a professional, working with someone who understands tonality, who understands storytelling, right? Who ensures that you're speaking correctly and distinctly.
Yeah.
It's one of those like in the process, like your body is remembering the experience, which you can now take to, maybe it's writing an email that like totally gets, someone to like, oh, I got it, calls you up, works with you, does business with you. You just don't know. But the idea in the end is like you put yourself out there, you took risk, but it was in the areas that you control.
Yeah, 100%. And Patrick, we have this incredible tool that was a strategic byproduct of us starting these podcasts together called the Infinity Wealth Tool.
Yeah.
And so remember that you can go to wealthuntethered.com and you can access the Infinity Wealth Tool, which is, I want to use the word simply, it's profound, a series of profound questions, powerful questions that you can ask yourself that Patrick and I use in our everyday life to accomplish the things that we've been able to accomplish, that we'll continue to use, that we use today, that we'll continue to use in the future. They're timeless, principle-based questions, powerful questions that we can ask ourselves to assist you in discovering all of this. So we invite all of you to use this tool on wealthuntethered.com. Use the Infinity Wealth Tool. Use it to assess what has worked, what has not worked over this last year, and to assist you with creating a future possibility, a vision for the new year in all the different areas of your life. So at Warrior, I talked about body. And for body, for me, that's my fitness, physical fitness, and then also the food that I eat. And there's more areas that go into that also, but those are the two main ones that I focus on with body. The next one is being, my spirituality, the spiritual side of my life. And a big one for me this last year, especially with Wendy, is that of my consciousness. And I've been seeking ways to increase my levels of consciousness, to be more aware, to be more present, to slow things down, to be able to go fast. Meditation, prayer, reading, writing has been a big part of that. Other meditation retreats that I've been to this last year. So body, being, and then the third one is balance. And balance is the framework of relationships. It's not only with Patrick that I have a relationship with, first and foremost, my wife, our kids, our grandson, my son-in-law now, and then any other key relationships that I have in my life. So body, being, balance, and then business. And business is a big one. We're talking a lot about business, but it's living this 4-dimensional life, not just a 2-dimensional or a 1-dimensional, but having that balance. And like you were saying earlier, Patrick, we may be pulled in one area more than another at times of our life. But if we're consciously working on all 4 core areas, or this wheel that you talk about also that includes a little bit more in depth in some of those areas, it fulfills us. I'm more fulfilled when I'm striving towards something, when I'm challenging myself versus when I'm bored. And the media today, the television, they would put us into a trance. They would control us. The government would control us. They would want us to be in this trance. They would tell us what to do all the time. And we'd live in this socialistic economy and lifestyle, and everything would be done for us. Or we can continue to take control. We can be fulfilled at a deeper level and be conscious of this in our life.
Yeah. Dude, it's one of those really interesting periods in just human history where our attention is constantly pulled in so many different areas. And I don't think people are aware subconsciously of what that's doing, because the vision for our life, our focus, right, is being controlled and influenced, right? You look at the news, right? And like every day the sky is falling, right? And there's been horrific things that have happened since the beginning of humankind, right? Since the beginning of recorded history. Probably even before then. But really looking at like what's going on right now, I remember having a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago, and they're talking about all these things that are happening on the other side of the world, and like how it's going to affect us. And I'm like, dude, are you serious? Right? You have zero influence, zero control. Okay, and it's affecting everything. It's affecting his marriage. It's affecting his business. It's affecting everything.
Yeah,
right.
Distracting him.
And so right now we're in a very interesting like time period, because there's so much information, there's very little wisdom, right? And there's it seems, the ability to critically think in order to discern between what's helpful and what's not helpful, what to take in, right? What to believe, what not to believe. And that's where it's like, it's challenging. We get the challenge. We're exposed to the challenge all the time, but there are ways in which you can navigate things to have a more fulfilling life. That's the point of this podcast, is us essentially sharing what's worked for us, because once you've experienced something that works for you, once you experience a certain degree of life, you want to share it. And it doesn't mean that we have all our shit together, because we don't, right? And you and I, what's really been cool about this whole year is we've been super vulnerable with each other. Yeah. Right, dude. Yeah. Here's where I'm struggling. Here's where I'm falling short. Yeah. Man, some stuff's happened, but we contextualize it because we trust one another, and we realize that one another we care for each other, and we want to take our experiences and be of benefit to each other. Yeah. Right. And in the process of doing that, I think it helps us realize that, wow, the purpose is beyond me, right? Obviously, there's purpose in me and my life and what I get to do, but you get to this point where it's like, I don't care about me. I do, but like, I realize that what's most important for me is like essentially having those especially within my circle of influence, right, live even more fulfilling lives. Yeah. That, man, I mean, look with Weston, I know you don't necessarily like going to Disneyland, but you had a ball at Disneyland because you were experiencing your grandson, right? Yeah. I did the same thing. Like I was 3 days at Disneyland over Thanksgiving, and it's like, I couldn't believe, like, we go on the same rides over and over again, right? But it's just like experiencing my kids, experiencing Cynthia, because she never grew up with any of that stuff. So it's one of those, like, I think we find so much fulfillment in the lives of others because we're able to be of value to them. Yeah. Right. And I feel that as you position yourself, you really see a vision for your future, put yourself out there. Do something ridiculous. Say something ridiculous about what you want for your life, what you want for your business, what you want for your body. Right? When you put that out there, make it scare you. And when it scares you, okay, that creates this kind of environment of accountability, right? Where you're going to experience resistance, but hopefully you're learning that resistance is good. It's actually a sign, right, that your vision is probably a good vision.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. Something that that wakes me up in the morning, that drives me to do certain things, to have certain habits. I'm working on some business stuff right now where I'm slowing things down at 8:30 at night. I'm in bed by 9 p.m. and I'm asleep just after 9, and I'm up at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning because I'm driven towards writing this new book with Garrett Gunderson.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exciting and it's fun and it's having this massive ripple effect in all these other areas of my life, because how we do one thing is how we do all the other things in our life also.
Yep. How you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Patrick, this has been really fun for me to recap this with you. Everyone listening and watching this, let us know. Let us know if you're liking this, if you're enjoying this, if you want to see us go in, or what you'd like to see us add to what we're sharing as we go into the new year and we're putting together our list of topics and things that we're going to share. We're going to continue to share with all of you what's been working in our lives and the perspectives that we're gaining. We hope that it's of value to you, but we want you to test it. We want you to take what we say and we want you to test it for yourself. And we have coaches and we have people that we work with. Patrick and I share stuff with each other, but then we run it through our own filter. And we find out what's best for ourselves individually, for us with our family, and then we move forward in that direction. I have my vision for the year overall in these 4 key areas of my life, but then I'm going to review that on a weekly basis, daily at a minor level, weekly at a little bit deeper level, monthly, quarterly. And again, if you're watching this, like Patrick said earlier, if you're watching this in June of next year, take an assessment at that time. What's working? What's not working? What do I want to stop doing in these key areas of my life? What do I want to sustain doing that's working? What do I want to start doing? And have fun with it. Find enjoyment in all of it.
I think something that's interesting that I'll add as a final comment, I think when you have this vision of yourself, whether it's a month from now or 6 months from now or a year from now, okay, and that vision, right, is clear to you, who you are, what you're doing, what you're experiencing, what you're feeling. It's essentially taking that person, right, that experience, which you can close your eyes and meditate and visualize that. You bring it to right now. Okay, how can you be that person right now? My mission is to bring my best self to life, right? Especially my presence, passion, and wonder for all. So it's one of those ideas where it's like taking that vision of your future and living that today. It helps you essentially propel yourself into that future vision. And then when the vision isn't this static thing, right? The vision is always expanding. Life is always expanding.
Yeah, but you got to start with the vision.
Yes.
You got to have that vision first to be able to work towards it and course correct on. So we hope you've gained value in hearing this, and we hope that you're going inward yourself, just like Patrick and I do. It's no different for us than it is for you or for you and anybody else out there. Some of the greatest and most successful people I know, Patrick included, works his ass off. And they grind and they course correct and they have the vision and they work, and it's fulfilling. So find joy in that along the way. And we wish all of you a prosperous new year. Please celebrate and appreciate with safety. Make sure that you're responsibly. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Be responsible, but have a great time. Be with your family. Be with your friends. Go inward yourself. Patrick and I are doing this. All of what we talked to you about is what we have done and are doing and will continue to do in our life.
Yep. Wish you the best. Have an amazing end of the year. And again, this is information, right? And information essentially is coming from some pretty profound stories that we've had, experiences we feel were intended not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others. This is the time. This is the time at the end of the year where you can reflect and start to really understand and evaluate where you're at now, and then also start to look at where you can be in the future. And so take the effort. It takes effort, but take the time to do that. It's definitely going to be worth it, and can't wait to hear about your feedback. Make some comments, send us emails as well. There's all sorts of contact information on wealthuntethered.com.
Yep. Success leaves clues. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays to everyone out there, and we wish everyone the very best.
Thanks, everyone.